Hey, good morning, everybody. How are you?
Good morning.
All right. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving and spent time with family, friends, and ate a lot of good food. On behalf of the board and the superintendent, I'd just like to thank you for being here. This is a great time when we can all get together and talk about things that, are vitally important to all the entities that help make Charles County Public Schools great, and we look forward to your input into the presentations. So if we could, we have some new faces, so we'll just go around the table real quick and do some introductions. I'm Mike Lucas. I'm Chairperson of the Board of Education.
Good morning. I'm Yanel Morley, the Vice Chair.
I'm Daughtry Butler Washington, District 3.
Good morning, David Hancock, District 1.
Good morning, Nicole Kramer, District 3.
Hello, good morning. Jamila Smith, District 2.
Good morning, Brittany Thomas, District 2.
Good morning, Sanisha Thomas, District 1.
Good morning, Linda Warren, District 4.
Good morning, welcome everyone. Maria Navarro, Superintendent.
Good morning, good to see everyone. I'm Kevin Lau, Chief of Teaching and Learning.
Good morning, Mike Heim, Chief of Operations and Supporting Services.
Good morning, I'm Marvin Jones, Chief of Schools.
Good morning, Charmaine Thompson, Chief of Instructional Technology.
Good morning, Karen Acton, Chief Financial Officer.
Good morning, Nikki Majors, Chief of Human Resources.
Good morning, my name is Chris Miller. I'm your Blueprint Implementation Coordinator.
Good morning, Eric Schwartz, Staff Attorney.
Hello, I'm Edith Patterson, Delegate for this district.
Hello everyone, my name is Sharon Lanier. I work for Delegate Chief C.T. Wilson. I'm his Legislative Director, and I'm here in his stead today.
And good morning, Senator Arthur Ellis, District 28. I just want to say, on behalf of my colleague, Senator Jackson, who's traveling, Delegate Harris, who is traveling all conferences, and of course, our chair, Delegate Davis, who is not feeling well this morning. We're here taking notes, and we'll report back to them. That's my assignment.
Jenny Ellen, Acting Deputy County Administrator.
Good morning, everyone. Amanda Stewart, County Commissioner, District 3.
Good morning, everybody. Gilbert Bowling, County Commissioner for District 1.
Finally, Commissioner Ralph Patterson, District 4.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. And, for those of you that have been through this before, we'd like to present a topic, and there's a little thing called the blueprint, which I'm sure you've all heard of, and we'll get that at the end of the program. But we'd like to start off with legislative positions, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Schwartz, and you should have a copy of that in your folders in front of you. A lot of these follow positions that MABE has taken, but Mr. Schwartz will highlight a few of the more important ones.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. And yes, it is in your packet. These are legislative positions that the board has taken from year to year, and most of them are continuing year to year because they're general positions that we have taken to support public education in Charles County. The one issue I'd like to highlight for us this morning is on page 2, the second issue down, the unfunded mandates. And this has become increasingly an issue because of the tightening budget I think we're going to be facing over the next several years. Every time a bill passes in Annapolis that doesn't have funding attached to it, it's going to take away our ability to address the blueprint. And that's our main focus, the blueprint. And I think the General Assembly has made that education focus, the education focus for the state moving forward. We do have state funding, we do have county funding, sure, but all of our dollars that we have are going to be attached, in a sense, to meeting the needs of the blueprint. And every time there is an unfunded mandate that comes our way, it really makes it that much more difficult for us. So I wanted to highlight that among all the other issues that are in this document. You can certainly review it when you have a chance. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to myself or any of the board members who can address those issues for us.
I have a question regarding that. In my committee, which is Ways and Means, we offer a lot of, quote, mandates for sources through education. The rationale that's cited here, is this from discussion only for Charles County, or is it something that the school board or school boards across the state have also endorsed or suggested?
So this, as Mr. Lucas said, matches what the Maryland Association of Boards of Education has advocated for many years. They're concerned statewide for all boards of education about unfunded mandates. That's a particular concern of Charles County Public Schools and the Charles County Board of Education, but it's not just our concern. That is a statewide concern, and it will be something that MABE, I think, will be pushing this year as a major concern when there are bills that do have mandates that don't have the funding attached to it.
Okay, thank you. So it's looked from their priorities.
Yes.
It does mention.
That's great. And I think that the thing to keep in mind is that if a system were to enact that legislatively passed mandate, that majority of that money would have to come from a local level rather than a state level. So that puts an onus on county government.
Was that a disclaimer?
A statement of fact. That's it? Okay,
Yes.
Awesome. So I know there's a lot of things in here. If there's anything you have a question on, please feel free to reach out to Dr. Navarro or Mr. Schwartz, and they can follow up with any questions you may have on the legislative positions. The next thing on the agenda, at our last meeting, the board voted to pass on to you a recommendation for an increase in the salary for the positions on the Board of Education to include the SMOB, that's a student member of the board. And the board looked at salaries across the state and compared salaries of similarly sized systems. And that will be forwarded to you. Mr. Schwartz, will you be doing that? So just didn't want to hit you with that cold, but that will be forwarded to you for your consideration, because any change in salary needs to be done through the legislature. And obviously you can't comment on it now because you don't have it, but
Well, you can tell us about it.
I can do that. So currently,
How about that?
certainly can. So currently the board, we used to receive a salary plus a stipend for travel. That changed last year because that stipend wasn't taxed. So that changed, and now it was just rolled over to be part of the salary. So currently, the chair receives $8,500, and the vice chair and the other members receive $6,800 per year. And the request that was put forth and voted on by the board would have board members make, Mr. Schwartz, I don't want to get it wrong, how much was it?
So it'll be $14,000 for the chair plus the $1,500 in travel and expenses. And the other board members would be $13,500 for salary and $800 for a salary and expenses.
So that's 15.5 total and 14.3 total for the chair and the other members respectively. Yeah, and the SMOB, yeah. And the SMOB board member, that was $3,000, I believe?
Correct.
Going up from $1,000. And so, currently, today, we are the 9th largest school system in terms of student population. Currently, we're the 8th highest paid. With this increase, depending on what other counties do, it might move us up a little higher. But again, the board looked at what board members were being paid in other counties, and that is the number that was voted on by the board, and what will be presented to you.
Okay.
And Mr. Lucas, just two things would add to that. The board has not received an increase in the salary since 2014.
That's correct.
And the other thing to mention is this salary increase would not take effect until 2027.
Yes, that's correct. So it would not affect the current board, but
Except for the student member of the board, if the legislation passes, the student member's scholarship would
Increase.
take it to effect.
Thank you.
that's correct, yes.
So I know a lot of challenges with trying to recruit board
board members, especially on the board, would probably be a lot of people who are self-employed or they work for a nonprofit, and healthcare can be a challenge for them. So has the thought ever come across y'all's mind to allow board members to buy into the healthcare package so that they could have an opportunity to have healthcare? Because that can be quite expensive on the market. Is that
Sure. So the answer to your first question is no, it has never come up. So I'll look to Mr. Schwartz. I don't even know if that, under current legislation or rules, if that's possible.
So if the board were to receive health insurance, it would have to be included in the salary and expenses.
I would just, I mean, my suggestion, I know I don't have any say in it, so to speak, but I mean, for recruiting board members, especially new board, if, you know, we want to get qualified candidates, I think it's important to offer that. You pay for it at the rate, but paying the rate of an active school board member, employee is beneficial. It might be helpful in attracting good candidates to run for office if they know that's an option. Not the only option, but it's an option. Just a thought.
Okay, I have a thought also.
Yes, sir.
If we don't do it, will y'all go on strike? You said absolutely?
Absolutely.
I said absolutely.
We'll be in Bladen Street in Annapolis.
Yes. Picket lines. Yes. But, you know, I mean, I know the board is nonpartisan, but you all got to run for office, so y'all are politicians. And so, I mean, have you thought about the blowback when the citizens say, hey, what? They want to double their salaries? What the heck? Y'all thought about that?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, usually these things, even in Annapolis, we just received a pay raise last year. It went through, request went through commission, so our hands are not on it. And even with inflation, I think it's probably what, 4% per year for the next 3-4 years, something like that, measured. So, I mean, I'm taking polls and see how, but generally, citizens don't like politicians bumping up their pay like that, you know, and that's potentially problematic. So that's my thoughts. So putting that legislation in, if it's put in, we would need you all to come testify for it. So could you raise your hand who's willing to come to Annapolis and testify for that? 1, 2, 3, 4, okay.
Whatever the will of the board is.
Okay, so the majority will come and testify for it, okay.
I think Commissioner Patterson
Yeah, I was
raised his hand, but I would also after him have a comment.
Okay.
So, Mr. Schwartz, when you send over the proposal, can you make sure to look at the increase in the 2014 as well? Because that's a pretty big increase as far as, you know, making that palatable. You know, you're almost talking like a 40% increase in pay. So is that in line with what happened in 2014? That would be a lot, that would go a long way to helping to pass that on to the public as far as what is in line with previous increases.
In 2014, the salaries for board members, not the chair, but the board members went from 4,000 to 6,000, so that's a 50% raise in a sense. And for the chair, it went from 5,000 to 7,000.
And we can also send you the salaries and size of the other jurisdictions in Maryland.
I'm going to follow through with Senator Ellis because we will be the bearers presenting this legislation. Yeah. And I noticed that not all the board members raised their hands. And so was this suggested a salary increase offered by a commission? Because I know in prior boards, whether it's county commissioner or school board, they usually have a salary committee outside of the board or commissioners to offer the suggestions. It keeps your hands clean.
So no was the answer to your question. It was not. It was offered by a board member. And I appreciate your sentiment on the commission because I know that St. Mary's County is, I think, they may have just finished or are in the process of doing the same thing. And they're looking at all the positions in the county, not just the Board of Education. They had their judge of the Orphans Court and things like that. So, but that's the answer to your question, Delegate Patterson.
I'd like to say something. Yeah. I also want to add, thank you for your question. So it initiated with me. Ms. Acton first raised the issue about the board compensation, and how long it had been. So that's what started the discussion. And candidly, when we calculated, because there were several of us that spoke about it, on average, we make between $5 and $6 an hour. So it sounds like a lot of money when you talk about the increase, but for everyone to double their salary represents, I believe, Ms. Kramer, maybe $70,000 total. So it's something like way less than even 1% of our budget.
I'm sorry, what's 70,000?
Total, for all of us to get an increase.
total.
That would be the total amount. So it's less than the full-time equivalent of one person. And if this were passed, and by the time it would be enacted, it would have been about 13 years. So, you know, I understand and very much appreciate your sentiments about making this palatable to the public. But I think also, and I appreciate you raising the issue about the health insurance, because that was the point that I raised. We absolutely are also working members. You know, I mean, obviously no one runs for any of these positions to get rich, because let's face it. But comparable to what most other people make who put in the amount of hours that we make. You know what I mean? It's just being candid. Even if you just come to the board meetings, just the prep time alone for the meetings, but many of us are averaging easily 30 hours a week, you know, with very little effort, to be candid.
Mr. Schwartz, are they able to put in legislation that, are you allowed to put in legislation that would enable them to do it? Whereas they could set up a committee, it enables the Board of Education to prop up a committee, like a salary committee, where you can make the recommendations to your committee. And that kind of takes a little bit of the burden off of the legislature as far as giving you the raise. It just gives you the ability to establish the commission, and then you can forward your piece to them to make the pilot. That kind of separates the politicians from giving themselves raises, so to speak, to what Delegate Patterson was saying. Can you do that? Can you put that enabling legislation?
Does it have to be even legislated?
So there can be two ways to do it. One is the board itself could do its own study, and the second is the General Assembly can establish a separate commission to do it. The bill putting in the commission would be obviously these individuals sitting over here, and the board, of course, could do its own study. The board decided to move in this direction after hearing from their constituents and discussing among themselves, recognizing it wouldn't affect the individuals sitting here unless they're reelected. It's for the next board that would actually be benefited by this increase.
That might be a little more palatable. I'm not speaking for the delegates, but to me, listening, and I get it. I get your side, and I get the side of the ones that are making the decision, because that's going to be a heavy burden on them to essentially give another elected official a raise, where they just give the enabling legislation. That way you can appoint a citizen committee that it goes through, and that takes that burden off of the legislature, but also puts you where you
The
want
board
to be.
itself can do
I
its
was
own
actually
studies,
saying
but
that healthcare
there is-
is less of a, would be more palatable to the
Other
public.
counties have
probably
had,
less of a big
other
shot,
counties
doesn't-
have had the
I don't
General
know how
Assembly
much right
establish
now
a
it's big
commission
shot,
to it.
but you follow where I'm going with that. Just a suggestion, I mean, that's just from the outside looking in.
So I just have a few things to add, just listening to all of the sides and understanding your concern and the data that you presented. I believe for this conversation, it is clear that for the commissioners and for the delegates and for the senators, we can't give ourselves raises. And at the end of the day, what I'm hearing from our state officials, and I agree, I think it would be appropriate for your board to put together a citizen group to look at raises, just like we did. If you want our state elected officials to go to Annapolis to fight for this, we should, and I say we, just meaning part of Charles County, we need to give them additional information to make their job easier. And so you need that citizen group to come forth and to study the issue and to issue recommendations, and then that recommendation can be given to our state officials in Annapolis, and then they can support the requests. I really, truly believe that's the best way to move forward. And when I say a group of citizens, no board members, just citizens in the county, just like you would put together for naming a new school, and allow and share the data with them, share what's going on, the changes or what hasn't changed, and allow them to put forth a recommendation.
And I'll look to Mr. Schwartz, and to be clear, the board can do that on its own.
Because it's a committee.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, do they need the enabling legislation to be able, once the committee makes the recommendation, to then give themselves, so it might, I don't know if it behooves you all, I don't know how you're gonna work it, to put the legislation to enable you at least to do it, so that once the board comes back with the recommendation for you all, or whatever it is, that you can actually implement it, because these take time. And this won't even impact you all, it'll be the next board, correct? So
Yes.
it's not, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Stewart, I think you need to set the board up, but, you know, it's systematically how you do it, it's gonna be key for you all to be effective in it, so.
So again, absent of the SMOB, it wouldn't affect any board member until after the next
Election.
2026 election.
Yeah, and could I just add that I understand the heavy lift that all of you do and the time that it takes is truly appreciated. And I mean, we have to really, and on Commissioner Stewart's point, make sure it's a community-driven effort. I mean, once it gets to Annapolis to us, and we, the delegation, agree, it's not a heavy lift. You know, basically, I mean, Charles County has grown tremendously. My colleagues in Annapolis recognize that, and the student body have grown, and the workload has grown, and we understand that. I'm just concerned that, as the Commissioner stated, it has to be come from the community, and basically allow us to, go forward in a determined manner and just get it done. So we are putting the heavy lift back in your court to sell it to the community and to have that community support, because for any politician, pay raises is a very touchy subject. And I plan on being around for a little while longer. And they'll say, hey, you're just doing this for your friends. All you are my friends. And that's how folks see it, right? It's, oh, you put your friends in there, and now you're tripling their pay, and they'll make up stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so we just have to be careful with that. And that's a matter of survival. And I'm a survivalist, so.
And all else, right? I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Frankly,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I think we have message received, so
Yes,
we can do a little more work on our end.
No, absolutely. I was just gonna say, I appreciate the discussion and the recommendations. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stewart, I think it just wasn't brought up, wasn't presented. I don't know how it was done in the last time. We didn't even ask that question didn't come up. So I think that's a great idea. And so I agree with my colleagues. We'll go back to the drawing board, I guess, on that.
Yeah. Ms. Bella Washington, do you have something?
No, y'all said it all.
Okay.
I just want to make sure y'all, when we do this, I understand exactly what Board Chair Yunel said, and my colleagues and the commissioners, senators, and the commissioners. I just want everybody to realize that the blueprint, well, what we're here for, and want to make sure that that goes over the line. We don't want to worry about struggling money. Want to make sure we capture all that money. And we all got into this game about making sure that every child succeed. So I want to make sure that everybody remember, the blueprint is in my head. I want to make sure that that gets over the line, because I don't want us to be one of those counties that said that they can't find the money. And I want us to make sure we find the money. We've been doing great, and I want to make sure that we stay on top of it. So just consider that when you're thinking about finding the money. That's my punch for it.
I appreciate that, because in our committee, certainly we assess not just the state, but also county by county to see where we are. And that is always paramount in our discussion and thinking as well. So thank you for those comments.
I appreciate the feedback, really do.
Yes.
So. All right, next, I'm going to look to Dr. Navarro, and she will share some very interesting and perhaps eye-opening information regarding the blueprint.
Yeah, so thank you. Ms. Butler Washington actually positioned it perfectly for me. Welcome, Mr. Collins. Please get up and grab some breakfast as I'm speaking. Thank you so much for being here this morning. I want to spend a little bit of time talking through implications of the blueprint law for this legislative season, and please stop me if you have any questions, and I'm hopeful that this also incites a dialogue amongst the commissioners, the Board of Education, and our representatives as well at the state level. So good morning again. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you for those of you who joined the Board of Ed, Ms. Kramer and I, at the 5K turkey trot that we had at St. Charles High School. I know some of you, Commissioner Patterson came to the luncheon. I left beforehand. Commissioner Collins was there, next time in his running gear. And so next year, we're all going to try to beat the sheriff on the 5K. But this year, Ms. Kramer and I's job was to make sure everybody walked, so we were the last ones, not because of our ability to walk fast, but because that was our job, to walk everybody there. What a wonderful community opportunity to bring so many people together. And so I just want to publicly say that the school system will again support it next year. We had 53 students that volunteered to serve meals and to help. And we also had staff that worked Wednesday and Thursday to make that happen. So thank you so much. We had faith-based communities there. We had fellowship, and just a really nice activity in our county that brings so many facets of people together. And so I just wanted to say I was very grateful, a little sore the next day, but very grateful that we powered on, Ms. Kramer. So thank you so much for that. I am here to speak to you a little bit about the blueprint, and so I just want to remind you of the 5 pillars. You have this PowerPoint presentation. You're welcome to, in your handouts, you're welcome to take notes on anything that we talk about or any questions that you have. But as you know, the 5 pillars is a lot of our core work in the school system. And I wanted to start with some points of success, because many times we talk about the need, and Dr. Patterson mentioned that at the state level, everybody looks at all of the counties, and I want to say I am hugely grateful that I am in Charles County. I have an incredible supportive board. Commissioners have been incredibly supportive of public education. I'm very much, many times when I'm sitting with my fellow superintendents across the table and we're talking about the issues statewide, we really are in a very supportive, progressive county. And I know that the devil's in the details, and but it's the push-pull, it's the relationship with the commissioner's staff, it's the relationship with our delegation, it's the board, the deep work that the board does on strategic moves regarding policy and best use of our resources locally by the Board of Education that gets us moving forward. And so I just wanted to tout a couple of successes. So just in case you didn't know, Charles County almost doubled, only by a few kids, we almost doubled the enrollment from last year to this year for pre-K, Pillar 1. Almost doubled it, which is incredible for full-day seats. So we have our neediest children who we know cannot get access many times to quality pre-K programs now being able to do it. So we went from half-day programs, we went from other places, and we really stood up structures that help that happen. So we maximize our spaces. We partner, as you know, with CSM and use their spaces. We are projected next year as TC Martin moves out of the transition school to begin our 3-year-olds. We're ahead of the game in the blueprint because the blueprint requires 4-year-old tier 1s, but also begins to require 3-year-old tier 1s to be serviced. So we're going to do more of that servicing of 3-year-olds. And all that is investments that you will all see, we will all see the benefits of that as those children continue and move into our public systems. These are very early investments. We've expanded our nationally board certified teacher certification preparation. Lots more teachers taking advantage of it. We want to be strategic so that we are supportive in getting teachers to the schools where we need the best and we need the most supports for our students, and so that expansion is hugely important. That's part of Pillar 2 for the blueprint. Because of the local share, and let's just be honest, because of the local share, Charles County is in the top 3 in terms of its salary requirement, meeting the salary requirement of $60K. We don't have to be there today, but we're ahead of the game. We're being competitive. We're about 57.4 for starting
57,
salaries, around those salaries. And so we are, and I asked Nikki to go back and check, because I actually think we're higher than places like Montgomery County and other starting salaries, even Prince George's County for starting salaries. We're gonna double check, but we are definitely aggressive at our campaigns, our marketing campaigns, to bring people to discover Charles County and to come to Charles County to teach. We've expanded our AP offerings across all high schools. If you were able to listen to or attend the State of the Schools earlier this fall, you heard me talk about the expansion of AP courses. That is extremely important, not just expanding the offerings, but also expanding the flexibility for students to take it earlier. There are courses that kids are ready for that challenge as freshmen. We don't have to cram them all junior and senior year and have a whole bunch of, worrisome students. There's opportunities to do it throughout. I'll talk about that a little bit more later on, but I am very, very excited. In your handout, in your packets, you also have a pretty little colorful overview of our early college and dual enrollment in case you ever needed to understand where we stand as a county. But we just announced that we are expanding the early college program. So, we started that 2 years ago. It didn't exist around here. Frankly, early college does not exist or did not exist in Southern Maryland. So Charles County is leading the way to maximize the uses of having CSM as our local college, and we're expanding early college. So we just announced that we're expanding early college programs for next school year, including 3 pathways. Those beautiful buildings off of Hughesville, off of 5, well, guess who's gonna be in them during the school hours? Our kids, because a lot of people use them, but they use them in the evenings because they're working adults that need to come back and get certified in the medical sciences or CT. Well, our kids need to be using it during the day. We need to think about the places where we learn can be a multitude of places, and we should be maximizing that. So next year, we have the medical coding certification program, where kids can graduate with an associate's in medical coding, pharmacy technician certification program, and then we're gonna use the second building, the electrical certificate program. So you have these 2 handouts. The colorful is kind of an overview, and then right behind it is the press release that we did, 2 weeks ago or so. And so we're excited for families. This is the time of year, if you have a high school 10th grader, where we're talking to kids about those options, and for kids to make those decisions. We are maximizing how we think about transportation so that we can maximize our transportation to take the kids, to take the courses on site at those facilities, and maximize the use of the facilities throughout the day. Yes, sir.
With the career CTE programs, I'm concerned, will those tie into, I know you'll get to apprenticeship later, but it's a big thing with Blueprint, and also I serve on the apprenticeship commission currently, and we're concerned about these programs tying into apprenticeships. And the apprenticeships, they are paid, they are school to work pipeline. It doesn't end after high school. So any movement on tying those CT programs at the campus down in Hughesville into apprenticeships?
Yes, so one of the things that we are working with CSM is that as students do their associate's degree while finishing their high school diploma, part of their time is to do work-based learning, so that it is incorporated in that pathway that they follow. So that it's not the apprenticeship, like you said, or the internships and eventual apprenticeships are not sort of standalone as they are now, and as you know, your committee is grappling with. but that they are embedded. And I have to tell you, I think we are evolving what high school looks like, and we are changing the concept of what does it look like, where does it happen, and how do we mobilize young people to get them to places of work. And so we've expanded the apprenticeship program. The first role model to make this happen, when people say, oh, you can't make it happen, blah, blah, is to say, well, the second largest employer in the county, which is us, needs to model what that looks like. So we have apprentices right now that are sitting in human resources, or will start soon. We have apprentices in communications. So our last board meeting, we had our apprentice start to work on a lot of our communications, social media work. We have apprentices that are sitting in IT because, you know, if you have a computer problem, just give it to a 10-year-old and they'll fix it. So we have apprentices in IT. I'm hoping to eventually have some apprentices in food and nutrition. Mike Heim shop that has all of our building service folks, electricians, plumbers, all of our building folks. We need to model for the community how the second largest employer does that. And I also want to say that county government has also been willing to become an apprenticeship site. So we're going to work through the fact that, and we're having some great conversations, and I would ask for you to support with Indian Head the opportunity to also host some of our apprentices moving forward. We've had, I think, good progress in some conversations to make that happen, but we want to see a lot more young people learning what they want to do as they kind of enroll in the world of work, and they sort of translate the skills that they learned in our schooling into the world of work.
Right.
So we're excited about that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And try to just finish up really quick, if you mind. You know, I was at a meeting with Labor Secretary Wu.
Oh, that's my comment.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Come on, go ahead.
Yeah, and so that meeting a few weeks ago really annoyed me because folks were making all kind of comments on why apprenticeships can't really flourish in Charles County. Cannot. And you know, it's just basically annoying. And we have all these institutions, like say the school system, we have the base, we have the county government, we have SMECO, we have the hospital. We have a lot of businesses. We have Wells Group, which is the largest fuel distributor on the East Coast. We have a lot of businesses here, and you know, it's like, my point was, we don't need any excuses. We need energy into helping these students go from school to work through apprenticeship program. And it's possible, others are doing it. And another, I'll just end with, came up during that meeting in St. Mary's County. They have a tremendous amount of apprenticeships going into different technology. And they're doing it under the banner of Southern Maryland. That means Charles County. When one program has 40+ students from St. Mary's County and 3 from Charles County. So they're taking our monies and fully funding St. Mary's students. And while we sit back and we watch and allow it to happen. That's why I was annoyed. I said, that's unacceptable. You will not take Charles County money, we're the largest county in Southern Maryland, and just focus on St. Mary's and Calvert County. And so, you know, that's an issue that we are vocal about and we're working with the state to fix. But I would want the school system to focus on that also. You know, and to basically, with our great transportation improvements and availability of bus drivers and a whole bunch of new buses, I see it by Craig, you know, we can get our students. And one of the big things, big excuse was transportation. Oh, we can't get the students to these programs. We're paying a lot of money for transportation. And we have the assets. And so it's possible, and we need to end all the excuses for our students not participating in these great opportunities. And we need to be forceful in making sure that the monies that are given to Southern Maryland, Charles County, don't get an equal share because we're not equal. We are a larger county than St. Mary's. It has to be equitable, not equal. And so we have to really be assertive with that. And at the state level, you know, that's the message we will take when it comes to budget and budgetary issues.
Thank you.
I think, Dr. Navarro, you're on the right track. Simply because you already cited that you have the apprenticeship of the students going to the Hughesville campus. And that's what we were concerned about, what's going on. The persons who got the funding, in their defense, they asserted that they got the funding and they decided how the funds would be allocated for Southern Maryland. So I appreciate that. I do have one question when you talk about early college and dual enrollment. Is there a grade requirement? Is this open to all students, or is there a GPA stipulation?
There is a GPA right now. It's a 2.75 GPA that is a requirement. It is something we are talking about as we look at other states about the GPA requirement, but right now there is a GPA requirement.
Thank you. Just to interject a few things with respect to apprenticeships and CTE programs. One of the things that I'm concerned about in the county is, and Senator Ellis just said it, it's about equitable, right? Access. And everyone knows that North Point produces a lot of kids, have a lot of programs in the CTE program. I just hope that one day in the county, we can have programs of equal caliber across the county. So not everyone is just looking at North Point as the best school for CTE programs. The other thing I want to bring up is regarding apprenticeships. I believe one of Senator Ellis's colleagues last legislation term introduced a bill, and I don't think the bill passed, but introduced a bill regarding schools to when they're doing their programming, you know, at the end of the year, or not at the end of the year, but you know, when during the school year, when your professional counseling department is bringing in the military and bringing in the colleges and universities, you know, we do that, right? Well, some school districts do it better than others. Some schools do it better than others. One of the things I would love for you guys to look at is making sure to see if we need to have a policy that ensures that your professional school counselors are bringing in the apprenticeship programs, okay? And I took a look at the senator who had presented the data. Some schools are getting it, but some are not, and maybe we just need a little additional help. Set a policy at your level, at the school board level, to say that, again, in closing, if you're bringing the colleges and the universities, if you bring in the military, yeah, you got to bring in those apprenticeships. You got to bring in those businesses because those are equally important. Like I said, I have to say this, some schools don't need help, right? Those schools in the county that gets it, they could be a model to help the other schools. But I think we have a responsibility to bring those businesses in and showcase those apprenticeships for our students also. So I appreciate if you would consider taking a look into that to see if that's something that we can address. Thank you.
No, I think this is a great opportunity. Senator Ellis, I didn't realize that what you just spoke of, and I think having all three of these boards together to make pretty large financial decisions and policy decisions on the county, having us in a room together to have these honest discussions is important. One thing that Dr. Navarro I've talked about is how economic development from a county standpoint ties into the school system. And when you're talking about internships, and I will tell you, my children are a product of what you are. One's in the early college enrollment and loves it. The other one is in the 2-year MIFRE program. So it's working. And when you talk about Indian Head, I mean, if anybody listened to our presentation a couple weeks ago about Indian Head, $1.2 billion is coming towards Charles County over in Indian Head, which presents a tremendous opportunity to what Senator Ellis was talking about. These students, it's not just a minimum wage job. These are careers, and capitalizing on that and making sure that in our school system they realize you can stay here and you can make good money is imperative. And one thing that I have learned personally and grown over the last 5 years in office, and you spoke to it, it takes the investment early to get the results. This stuff with Indian Head, for me, when we started 4 or 5 years ago, it was a pretty big investment in direction we gave our federal delegation. Like, we demanded, we're a big part, like to what Senator Ellis said, we're a big part of, Congressman Hoyer's district. We need to see some, and now we're seeing those results. And it's incredible, the opportunities that are present. Now you're on the same pathway. One thing I will say is, and I've learned as a parent of students in the school system is, they say, raising instead of lowering the bar so the students that need extra help to get to where they need to be, let's, a rising tide raises all ships. Well, there's also a perspective I've learned that not every child has a ship. And as we raise that tide, some kids are drowning. And I think when you talk about, to what Commissioner Stewart said, my kids have the support at home. They're going to, I'm on them. I'm on them. But they have, some of the kids, and it goes back to the GPA that Dr. Patterson spoke of. Some of these kids that maybe are 2.0, 1.9, I'll be honest with you, I was there. But when they find their niche, they explode and they take off. So maybe looking at it from that perspective, maybe the kids that really are presenting some of the most difficult challenges to you all are some of the kids that really need these programs, because school just isn't their thing. They can get into heat and AC, and man, they explode, and then they're productive, and you're getting them early, so then they become this huge productive part of society. So I just want you to hear from me, just as one commissioner, that I'm appreciative of the work you all have done. And that's not just, Dr. Noir, but the board. And I can see it in my kids. And so I think if we work together and have these conversations and are willing, put all the other junk aside and just sit here and have an honest conversation. I'm very disturbed about what you said about St. Mary's and Calvert and them getting these resources and not us. So that's a problem. So thank you.
That's the same thing going back that I've said for years, even with Tri-County. A lot of times, Charles County, our folks don't get equal access. So that's another issue. And I know, Dr. Navarro, we're talking about the blueprint, and I really believe to bring the conversation back, just as a reminder, everything that we're talking about is in the blueprint. And we have to remember that these efforts will get us to be, the best in the state. And so just want to bring the conversation back, just to remind everyone that this is part of the blueprint.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate the comments. I will say, we started pushing a little bit of the conversation with Dr. Wilson, and she has been a fabulous partner as we look at the requirements of who gets access, very mindful of, does every kid have a boat, right? And it's important to ensure that we do that. I wanted to just add that 2 quick things as we move forward. The first one is that, it is a longstanding myth in some ways, I will say, having now been here for 3 years, that North Point is the only place where there's opportunities for students. But we have a work group right now that is putting together some recommendations for our board around where programs in the next 10 years will be located throughout this county. And you heard me say that learning can happen anywhere. So you could be a kid from La Plata High School going to a college campus to do your part of your education, as well as be back in your home school, or from Westlake, or from any school in the system, Thomas Stone. And so we're going to be thinking of creative opportunities that maximize our facilities, and I mean collective educational facilities, and this is why I am excited to work with Dr. Wilson, because she sees sort of the idea that we have educational facilities throughout the county, and so students have options of where they want to go. And they don't have to give up their soccer team. If they play soccer, or if they are doing basketball or volleyball, they can come back and join and, their activities. And so that's important too. So we're trying to figure that out, and I'll make sure that I include you when we do the presentation to our board later in the spring around how we envision that. McDonough is going to be a huge arts performance schools. We're enhancing the facility, and we're rethinking how we expand that opportunity to everybody. And that absolutely means that we rethink also how we transport. We are the most complex transportation system within the county, because we are moving kids all the time around because they need to go to the places where they need to go. The other thing that I will say about the Blueprint is with the Blueprint funding, we have career counselors. We had career counselors at all of our high schools. We have now added them at the middle school because we want to start talking about career. And career doesn't just mean stopping education. It means how do you get to your ultimate career, educating as a lifelong learner and accessing education when you need to be able to meet that career goal. So we're starting, we have career counselors. They started this year at all of our middle schools. We dip into elementary school because when is the best time to talk to families about options and careers? Today, now, as they're sitting as fifth graders and younger and as they're in middle school. So we are going to expand our CTE summer camps, and we're going to expand the opportunities. And we got to make sure that we invite all of you to the different activities that we're doing with families. If you don't know anything about a career choice that your kid is exploring, you know, that's okay, because we as the school system make sure that we are able to provide them that connection to the world of work. I've never flown an airplane, but if my kid wants to be a pilot, I want the school system to connect them with that world of work, right? So we're very much thinking about those possibilities. But absolutely, the Blueprint has come in, and it is trailblazing, and it is changing the way we think about education moving forward. Yes.
Yeah.
Let Diana go first.
Before you jump, I love the ideal about the CTE, and I want us to think, because you know how much I've been thinking about and talking about this, financial literacy, and just to open it up to the banks. The banks are eager for our children to be in there, to learn, to mentor for us. So to me, financial literacy is the backbone of everything, because if we know how to save our money where we at, our whole generation would be better off. So just make sure that we have that, and I know it's in the Blueprint, the financial literacy. So I want to make sure that we have room to make sure that it's in one of these schools so we can be able to push that along, because to me, that's the foundation of, to me, the United States. If we all collectively know how to spend our money, the United States will be a better off place. And the programs to helping people will actually be programs to enhance everybody. So we won't have to spend those billions of dollars in helping out people. So if we already know how to spend our money, we'll be well off. So just the banking, they out there ready and eager for us to support, be able to support also.
Thank you.
And so I just wanted to make a real quick comment to Commissioner Stewart's point about the programs and how this, to what Dr. Navarro said about this whole myth that exists that North Point is the only school that has programs. So we recently did a town hall, and the topic was CTE, and that was one of the reasons, because we get a lot of, I spent a lot of time even before being on the board talking to people, because my daughters went to North Point and did participate in CTE programs, but that is what people think. And we wanted to make sure that we educated the community to make sure that they're aware that there are programs at every single high school. And so a lot of it is messaging. We have to continue to re-educate and say, hey, no, North Point is not the only North Point or bust, as I think Dr. Navarro has said before. There are other programs, like McDonough has a great fine arts program. We have CASE program at McDonough, right?
Project Lead the Way.
Yeah, Project Lead the Way. Lots of different programs, so it'd be really a good idea. I know we all have competing schedules, and I don't know that you all were able to watch the town hall, but it was a really good presentation about all of the programs that are available at all of our high schools. And I was glad to see too that we had a lot of, bless you, parents who were that came out that weren't just parents of high school students, but parents of younger students, so that they can get that information early, because as you know, you have to apply to most of the programs in 8th grade, and then we have some that you can apply to in 10th grade. But just wanted to throw that out there, that it's a lot of mixed messaging that's going on in the community, so we need everybody to kind of be on the same page that, hey, that's not true. If you're zoned for, La Plata, these are the programs that are available there, or talk to your career counselor at your now middle school about what programs are available, because sometimes kids don't want to go to a different school that's outside of their neighborhood, you know what I mean? And so we want them to know that that is an option if they wish to apply, but at the same time, there's programs available at all high schools. So just wanted to put that out there.
So I appreciate that. I want to make sure I'm clear. I didn't use the word only. I didn't use the word only. I am aware that there's programs at other schools. When we were talking about equitable programming And it's not just CTEs, and I have a note here. It's also about athletics. When you look at North Point High School, people in the community, and I know parents, I know children in the program, the CTE programs tend to be better, looked up, on as better, especially the athletic department. And I understand the different divisions, and I understand the funding mechanism. But I really believe that we need to do a better job making sure that all programs, not that they're just offered, right? But they're offered at the same level. That's my issue.
If I could jump in, Commissioner Stewart. Oh, did you?
No, I just said point taken.
Okay, yeah. I've spoken to Dr. Navarro about that, and several of us have, and not just athletics, but also fine arts. So I think that your point is very well taken, because it's one thing to be offered, it's something else for it to be equitable across the county. And you have to also look at transportation, maybe for children that live, for example, in District 2, that might have more challenges rather than maybe District 4 where they could walk. And I also want to plug the early college program, having just gone through it with my honor student who's now at Howard University. I can say not only did she transfer successfully 33 credits, but she's also the transition, and then, for many of us, that first year of college is rough. Full disclosure. It was very rough. Look, at a minimum. But because she had that full year as a college student, it doesn't feel so unusual to her. And I'm very appreciative that now we're able to offer those 2 full years, and also the fact that Southern Maryland, not just Southern Maryland, but Charles County in particular, started that program that has been offered at much larger districts like Montgomery, like Prince George's for many years. Because as we look forward to the future, whatever success looks like for individual children, it's not always college, being candid. Right. So I personally want to see every child succeed at the level that looks best for them, whether it's college, it's career, it's military, whatever that looks like. And also serving on the Pillar 4 Blueprint Committee with discussing more resources. We've spent a lot of time talking about this because this is very near and dear to many of us. So I appreciate those comments, because candidly, a lot of us have the same concerns.
And excuse me for 1 second.
Yes.
I just have a couple more things to add, and I do apologize, I need to leave. So I just want to get the couple things in, if it's okay. The first thing is, I really appreciate everyone coming together and having this conversation. As a mom of a recent graduate, I am very thankful for everything that the leaders have done to help to get my son in his second year of college, and so I appreciate that. And like Commissioner Bowling said, some children don't have parents like us that are constantly on them. One of the things that I would really appreciate looking into is, how can we use our apprenticeship programs, our CTE programs, to help those most challenged students, right? I know as a 20-plus year educator, some of those challenged students, they will tell you, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. But maybe we can change their environment, right? Like what Dr. Navarro was saying, we have educational systems and buildings across the county. Maybe we can take a look at that and start tracking that suspension data. Maybe we can decrease our suspension data, decrease the rate of suspension, especially for those troubled children who just truly don't want to sit in a traditional K-12 building every day. All right, so I throw that out, and right. If we have children who parents don't have the know-how to expose them to different careers, right? I remember having Alan sit down and say, no, you're taking this career interest exam that I got from my friend that was a professional counselor. I was shocked on the results. As a science major, and he loves science, I just knew he should go into the science field, right? I was shocked when it said something else. But not every parent has access to that. So I just want us to do a better job with helping those struggling kids. We're not their parents, but to some degree, we have to help to parent. So I appreciate everyone's time. I am in full support of the blueprint. Dr. Navarro knows I'm very aware of the blueprint. The last thing I would say with that is just use this as an opportunity. It would be helpful if you, at your town hall meetings, you really do push the blueprint. That mechanism of making sure that your parents and grandparents know about the blueprint and just really know about that part, because it really will help. All right, so thank you, everyone. I'm sorry, Doctor. I do apologize. I have to leave early. I have another meeting.
Sure, no problem.
Because the thing that pushed me to want to run for the school board was, the option was, if you get to middle school and have the student tell you where they want to be, and we can have like a track. You know, every child don't go to college. Every child don't want to go into a vocational. They might want to go to the military. And we find that track and it lights the fire under them, this whole system would benefit us. Because it's not the parent who wants them to do something, it's the child who say they want to do something. And I think that's where a lot of parents miss their buck at, because we trying to live through our children. I did it too. Yeah. So I am a product of it. And I quickly found out that I made a grave mistake. So by me recognizing that, now I can truly say that if I would have let him pick what he wanted to do, we all would be living something great. So that is a perfect thing to say.
And I'm gonna leave you with a homework assignment. And this is gonna be surprising to you. I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but I think about this every year. I'm gonna leave you with a homework assignment. Go back to your graduation programs. Just look at the last 4 years. Look at every school and look at the list of kids that says going into the workforce. I challenge you over the next 4 years to have that list look different. Instead of saying going into the workforce, I challenge you to have that now say, you know, the Wills Group, the Charles, Maryland, whatever. I want to say Savista, the hospital.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Don't get me started. I'll go back to I challenge the board to have your seniors leave the school that's going into the workforce, because not all of them will go into military and college, but with a specific byline. Because that means you have provided them the support and the guidance to go down that journey to find their forever career.
And if I could add to that, one of the conversations I had with my daughter, I said, very few people do one thing for the rest of their lives anymore. Nobody, you know what I mean? They're not going into a job and then retiring from that one job. I told her, focus on the skills that you will learn. We had that conversation because I was like, okay, I'm pushing her into a particular area. When she chose for her, because she left the CTE program. She had a 4.0 at North Point, but she was miserable. So when she discovered what she wanted to do, you know, now she's in communication. I thought she was going to go into STEM because science is her gift, but that's not what she wanted to do. But I told her, focus on the skills that you can transfer to other positions. Yes. So if you start in college, that may not be where you end up. It may not be for you. Or if you start in the workforce, you can always go back to college. Right. But focus on the skills that will candidly make you employable. Or have you create a job. Yes.
So,
Everyone.
yeah.
I will just tell you as we transition to the legislative.
Yeah, we're all,
For this board and for myself, high school diploma is not the goal.
That's right.
It is a connection to the next phase
The
of your
next
life.
step, absolutely.
And the only way we know how to do that is through data.
Yeah.
So the gentleman sitting next to me, he knows that he has to give me for every freshman and sophomore, that every single one of them is connected, meaning they either finish with a CTE pathway before they graduate, they have taken a certain number of AP courses, which gets them into a pathway of higher education successfully. Do not forget that 50% of kids who start college do not finish college, so we also have a college pipeline problem. And or that they have already experienced college, which right now the research is showing that if you experience college early, you're more likely to stay in college. And so in Charles County, we need our students to be able to have those connections. The kids that just have a typical high school diploma do not show me that they have those connections, and we need to reduce down to 0 the number of graduates that's the case. So we have to measure the data in every single year to make sure that every single kid is connected, and that is our ultimate goal.
I got one more thing.
Uh-oh.
Please extend, fund and extend your first-time credit summer school program. Don't get rid of that.
Yes.
That helps kids when they get to
I would say thank you to the commissioners.
Yes.
Because the cliff that is coming federally is not gonna be a cliff for Charles County. This year, you approved a budget that had $3.2 million for extended year learning, which ensured that we were able to give kids transportation, and they were able to, because that's another equity issue, only if my dad can drop me off, can I take my summer class, and that extended it. So actually, you guys have done that for us, that extended that, so we do not have a funding cliff when it gets to that.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Commissioner. So I am going to move on
I'm gonna stop talking.
to the legislative
I'm
pieces.
passionate about education, so
Thank
my
you so
apologies for leaving early.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I just want to start really quickly and going to go through the pillars, and I'm going to make sure I wrap up in the next few minutes and open it up for any other questions. Please stop me. Early childhood pillar 1, the only thing that I would ask for consideration is, in Charles County right now, it's not an urgency, but it will be. You heard me talk about the blueprint asking for tier 1 children, 4-year-olds, and then tier 1, 3-year-olds. At some point, there is going to be a need, and this is not just Charles County, this is statewide, and you'll hear quite a bit about it, about capital funding for all these 3- and 4-year-olds that we're gonna be educating the next several years. So it's just something to think about. The private providers is very much part of the blueprint. And I believe every county except maybe Baltimore City that has already a structure for Head Start is having difficulty to get providers, private providers, to sign on to the state program. So any legislation that modifies or gives more incentives to private providers for pre-K would be great. It follows the Excel's model that they have to have at least a 3 to begin the trajectory to be approved by the state as a private provider for pre-K. We only have a few private providers that are participating, and they're mostly family daycare services. So we too had to submit a waiver to the state. I believe almost every LEA had to submit a waiver for the private providers. So it's just something in your legislative discussions, pre-K. We're still all struggling with the pre-K piece. But internally, we are expanding as a school system. It's just that the blueprint law says that 30% of the pre-K for tier 1 students should be in the private sector, and it's just been difficult for all of us to do that. Yes.
Private providers, I've heard, even with, spoken with the state superintendent. From your perspective, what are the barriers to more of our Charles County private providers stepping up to participate in?
So there's a couple of barriers. I think a lot of it is there's a couple of infrastructure barriers. So when you are a private provider and you are approved by the state, you have to meet their requirements for the physical spacing, the type of facilities that you need to have. So those have been sort of barriers. That initial push to also get more highly paid staff, so the wage increases, you need to have really a certain number of children participating for you to be able to up the salaries of your staff significantly with those requirements. So I think that has also been a challenge. What we have been working on is bringing them together and providing all of the professional development and supporting any way we can their certifications, right? Because they need to have the same certifications, if you will, as the teachers and the instructional assistants working in our school system, and many of them don't. So I think they're having very meaningful conversations. I think the state is probably going to bring up some additional flexibilities just to be in tuned with, and any of those I think would be helpful to bring them to bring more of them forward.
Education Committee, if you could share that with me, and what bills are going through and where, and
I will make
yeah,
sure
so-
for any of these, we will give you guys like an alert of some type so that you're aware of them.
Also, we need to know what our unique issues are, so I can advocate for that.
Okay.
And so if there's anything that we could do locally that might not fit the Maryland mold, but we can advocate for, then please let us know as the legislation goes through, so we can make sure that we get those issues in the legislation.
Thank you.
I have a question for either Dr. Navarro or Senator Allen. When you talk about providers, is there an equity component? Because within the actual legislation, the blueprint, I mean, is there something that ensures, because I know even this time last year, this was a concern that was raised. But I'm looking at the process, and once we've actually reached that level where we can say that, okay, we're starting to see where we are fundamentally reaching goals, is there an equity component?
Yeah, I'm not aware of the blueprint or anything we've done after to really address that particular issue. And so we can talk offline as far as your ideas and how we can implement that. And we can look out for it in any legislation that's going through, but I'm not aware of any. Dr.
On that note, I understand what Commissioner Collins is saying. Are we even getting to a point where, I don't say where we can apply equity, but are we just not having enough people in the pool to pull from to even apply equity? I mean, that sounds like what the challenge is. Because if we don't have enough people that are even qualified, if we don't have enough people that are qualified, I don't even know if we can. We should apply the equity, but is it such a barrier that we can't even get a good pool of providers?
Well, so what I would say is we have 21 providers right now. Those are private home care and central care that are at the level 3.
Okay.
We have 0 at level 4, and we have 3 at level 5. And you can start the process at level 3. We had a few of them that went through last year, and none of the center providers pass through the state. So remember, the private providers go through the state. The school system does not certify them or anything like that. They have to be approved through the state directly. There is the Maryland, the Family Child Care Alliance of Maryland right now is working with 2 or 3 of our home care providers to help them through. So what has happened at the state level is that organizations began to kind of prop up to help different localities organize and work through all of the requirements that the state imposes. The school system we're trying to figure out how we also can support. We bring them together, we talk about the process, we educate them on what the process they need to follow with the state is, and then we also, as much as possible, try to figure out if it is a certification requirement, so their people have to get bachelor's or associate's degrees, and then how we could maybe collaborate to help them do that. I will make sure to get you any legislation that will be submitted that I think is strong and supportive of Charles County in mobilizing more of our sort of level 3 providers to do that. The conversation on equity around that piece is an interesting one because the blueprint was very, when it was designed, it said, you know, the reason they wanted 30% of pre-K to be provided in the private sector was acknowledging and bringing in and hopefully elevating the private care providers, and to get more of those sort of informal providers to move up to standards that would be what we call quality care, early childhood care. And it has, you know, this is reform work, so this doesn't happen in 1 year. This is starting to mobilize, and so you see organizations starting to get deep into those. I have always said that one of the areas where I am thinking long-term that we need to think about is La Plata all the way down to Cobb Island. I am there, we have a little bit of a desert of early child care opportunities for students, even facility-wise. So you will hear me in the next coming years, because once we open the second early learning site at Waldorf, I will be thinking a lot more about our little ones in the southern part of the county, and where are we going to be able to provide opportunities, both private and school system run. So those are things that are coming up. CIP is one of the barriers, but also the other piece that we have is, and I say workforce is a big piece, because as soon as we doubled that pre-K, guess what all my elementary people did? Went down to pre-K. So we had a lot more elementary openings because everybody went to pre-K. And so we're gonna need to be working on both of those.
I just wanted to just follow up, because I think part of the issue also is the lack of information and knowledge that exists within the community on the actual implementation of the blueprint. Because there may be potential providers out there that are clueless that there's a potential opportunity right now. And so perhaps, I mean, we could explore ideas to maybe develop even more fully a mechanism to get information out directly to the public.
Well, we're meeting with them monthly, Mr. Collins. I will say the reason we know where everybody is because we're bringing them mostly.
And I didn't say that as a criticism.
No, but I do think the state
you are
is.
the educators.
Yeah.
And what I'm referring to are individuals in the general public that may not be apprised to what is in place.
Yeah.
And this may be an opportunity for us on the government level to assist in providing that information. So I mean, I know you guys got this.
I think your point though is this is also a business model. And so the other piece that, you know, I sit on your boards on economic development, and one of the things that I think is important to discuss is and partially one of the barriers for a lot of people is this is a business model that for many communities informally has been a very informal care system, and now we're trying to move them into a business model that is highly regulated. So the table needs to be this long, the changing table. And so it is a huge mind shift for people who have frankly been raising our children early childhood for many, many years. And so there's an education component, but there's also a business component that I'm hoping that MSD sees a need to figure out and support in a multitude of ways.
Thank you. I'm the chief of staff for Delegate Harris. He's not able to attend, so I'm attending for him. And I just had a question. So is there funding available to support the infrastructure and facilities of these private facilities to be able to meet the standards?
So what the state does is they have given a per pupil amount. So when the blueprint law will give private providers a funding mechanism that pays them at a certain level so that they can sort of be able to run their business. As you know, many times you need to have the pre-funding to be able to meet all the requirements and then be able to then offset the funding for it. So the state does provide, the blueprint does provide funding at the same level that they do for the school system when we provide a slot for a tier 1 student.
But is that not until they are approved? It's not prior to get them up to standards prior to?
Well, the state does work with. So the state has a couple of incentives right now to get them from a level 3, which is where they apply to, and to be able to be maintained and move up to a level 4 or level 5 to stay as a private provider. They do have some. It is, the devil's in the details, and when we talk to our private providers, it is a question of their ability, it's a question of size, and how many changes can they make, how quickly, and then how quickly are they able to receive some funding to make these changes and then transition the students as they walk in. I think we're in a position where it is a good struggle we're going through, and I think more good thinking is coming out to help. Like if you're a private home care provider, there is now a Maryland organization that is helping you work through those issues so that you can be approved, so that, you know, we have greater options.
Just a question about that. When it comes to getting these private sector, whenever you're moving, you know, education, it's publicly funded in the private sector, the regulatory arm of it. So you get these businesses up and running, and you get them to a point where they're providing the services to the students. Is there a mechanism in place to provide the regulatory arm where they go out and there's site inspections so they don't just get up and running and then a year or two down the road they've kind of fell back and are not performing at the standards that we expect?
Yes, but that is the state's responsibility, so that's an important, because we have to, the state actually comes in and certifies us as well. So it all falls under the state to certify whether we're public or private. They have to come in and certify us.
So once this, say, I'll just use ABC Learning Center gets approved, and they're providing services to pre-K students, and they're getting funding directly from the school system, which is state and local funding, sometimes federal, I guess. The state actually has people employed to go out and do inspections to make sure that, oh, okay, wow.
They inspect us all the time.
That's an important part as a taxpayer that people are going to want to know. When they're putting out money to a private company, it's not in the public schools arm, that there's a regulatory side of this, and that is very good to hear, so.
That is how the law is written, so.
You educated me today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have a model, and the model is predominantly how the South do it. And it's a great model. The county builds the building, the school system takes over and makes sure the pre-K go all the way, they have their own buildings. And we're unique here, and it's just almost like the South, because we have a building in the southern part, and we have one in the middle, and we have one at the northern part, where all kids are mandated to go to pre-K. It's just like starting school. So once they go through pre-K, they go into school, and it's already a built foundation. I'm looking at it as, since President Collins stated that the county would be able to, you know, listen to me out, would be able to help. I didn't say do, I said help. That this could be a win-win situation for the whole county, because we're educating our youngest learners. Therefore, they're gonna benefit us coming through the school, and they won't land on the backs of the community. I'm just thinking out in the future. This could be something that we all could look forward to, because if you build those facilities and they would get inspected, just like Commissioner Gilbert said, they mandated get inspected, we all win in this situation, because expanding the schools, you come out cheaper building a facility for them and making sure that these, you know, the bathrooms are built for them, everything is built for them. And when they come into regular school, it is a school that they come into, and we don't have to keep expanding and keep doing all these things. But that's a model that we can follow. It's one already established. So if we could, you know, agree to go through that model, I think that would be a better choice for Charles County, because we have captured our younger learners, and also we got a facility for them that's built for them.
Dr. Navarro, I just want to add or cite that there are several child care legislations that have been pre-filed under delegate guidance. She takes the lead at the House. And we hope that we will send those to you, or you can be aware of them and possibly testify, because the concerns we've just heard verbalized here, it's also a concern in the General Assembly.
Yeah.
You know the challenges. And so we're trying to modify some of the laws. The delegate guidance pre-files, I think you'll find very interesting.
Thank you. Yes, we will follow up, and I am very happy to hear everybody's interest in early childhood because it is a huge investment. It is one of the light posts of the blueprint in my mind. It'll serve Maryland well in its investments, even where we are today. So as we move forward, I just wanted to queue up in terms of Pillar 2. You know, anything that the legislation is discussing to support the, you know, the Teacher Shortage Reduction Act that was partially funded last session, or any legislation tackling this topic, I would just ask you to consider it. I will be looking out for whoever is filing any legislation around that, because we will always be asking you to try to figure out ways to support how to build the pipelines. We are working hard to build our internal pipelines, and so I just wanted to make you aware of it. I know that you are all aware of the workforce shortages in education. So the one thing I did want to say is in Pillar 2, the career ladder, we had a meeting at the Maryland Negotiation Conference, riveting, but the Maryland Negotiation Conference, and we talked, we had people from AIB there, Rachel was there, and one of the messages that came out from her conversations with the superintendent is that we're phasing out the implementation of the career ladder, and that is important because it's a lot of critical work. It's a lot of systems work and strategic work on how do we make that happen. And the phasing out, I just wanted to say, there's no legislation request here, just wanted to let you know that that is helpful for school systems to be strategic in their movement. There is not a slow of momentum, and Charles County is not slowing down its requirements in meeting the blueprint requirements. We just need to be strategic, and we need to be able to come back on how the career ladder is going to affect the school system long-term, in how it creates salary requirements, salary pathways that make sense, that really relate to student improvement. So we don't want to just crunch numbers and create career ladders that meet the requirement of the law, but frankly do not improve student outcomes and fundamentally change access and opportunity for students. So we see a lot of support in how we're having dialogue, not just across MSD, but through the AIB on how to implement this. So I just wanted to make you aware of that.
That is for staff, correct? Career ladders for staff, correct?
Yes. Yes, it is the concept of the teacher, different levels of teacher, that you need to be nationally board certified, yes.
Dr. Navarro,
Yes.
for me. So in regards to the teacher shortage issue, last session, the governor's bill, which I co-sponsored, had a pathway for high school students to go into teacher training programs on a full scholarship, room and board, everything that passed. It required a 3.5 GPA. We took out the SAT requirement. Is Charles County aware of that, the school system, in identifying students like you do for the University of Maryland IEP program that we thank the commissioners for working with us to implement, and we have in our third cohort. But in listening to Commissioner President Collins mention that we passed these laws, do people know about it? Is it being basically advertised? Is this other opportunity available to work on the teacher shortage at a local level?
Yes, and I will say, yes, Senator. And we also, through one of our leads, our state grants, have our own scholarships. So we have 2 students right now that are getting their scholarships locally here to do to follow and pursue a teacher education program, then turn around and come back. You know, I think that, yes, we have those, and I think we're gonna need to just have more options for students. 3.5 GPA is wonderful. We just had a conversation about GPA, and so it's something, you know, that we just wanna make sure that, that we provide as many opportunities. So
Yeah.
any additional, and I think there might be some additional ideas that may bubble up this year to try to support that.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that our counselors really know about these programs and to really get them out into all the schools, that what's available to our students.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, and I am gonna set up a meeting with counselors too, because counselors and career counselors, so now that we have the career counselors and the high school counselors, we wanna make sure, it's a hard job to know everything about everything.
Yes.
And so what we wanna do is we wanna be strategic. We don't have to work in isolation. So Westlake doesn't have to doesn't have to be an expert in every single subject, and St. Charles can be, so I want the counselors to work in networks, and now a meeting doesn't have to just be for one high school or another. And so we can give parents system-wide workshops and students system-wide workshops so that they are aware of every opportunity.
yeah, thank you for that. And I like the model of the University of Maryland, the incentive program, which Charles County is, like I said, a third cohort this year. And I hosted a meeting of all the Charles County high school counselors in my office with the University of Maryland program administrators. And, I mean, basically got them to really get up to speed on how to identify more students to come into that program. So I think that process could be a model for us to work with the counselors as a whole instead of individual about the opportunity for students to get that full scholarship to go to any school in Maryland to become educators. And we took out a lot of the strings that would prevent students from joining up into that program. And so it's a wonderful new opportunity. It just became law this year. I really want Charles County to be at the forefront of identifying our students, could be from middle school, to get that full scholarship to go to any school in Maryland to study science, art, because all those basically are included in educators. And so we want to be practical and to really take advantage of these laws.
We want to document how many of our graduating seniors every year are tied to a workforce opportunity that is realistic, or a higher ed opportunity, or the military. Because I think we need to work through numbers. And so I am excited when I can say, we used to have, I'll give you a number. We used to have 34% of our kids taking Algebra 1 by 8th grade. That's going to go up. And so how much does it go up every year? So I am expecting all of you to always want from me data that quantifies how many more kids are accessing something that is going to tie them tightly to the world of work lifelong. And I plan to just, derive that through numbers, because numbers tell the story for the county. And we have a lot of youth that graduate from our high schools but may not be engaged in whatever is next for them, and we need to reduce that number.
And you said you have a numbers guy, right? Who works on statistics.
I have the and I'm a numbers gal, so my staff knows that I don't speak anything unless it's money and numbers. That's the only way I want to see the.
And even with numbers, we talk about AP and number of students taking AP. What I would like to know also is keep track of the numbers. The number of students who are in AP classes who are taking the AP exams, and the number of students who are getting a passing score, which is like 3 or 4 or 5, because those are the only numbers that really transfer to colleges. So not just the number of students in the AP programs, but the number of students who are taking the exam.
Senator, I am sending you my State of the Schools presentation where I have that documented so that you can see the progress in Charles County. The reality is, we have incredible youth, and so we have to, whether you have X home or Y home, it is our responsibility to make sure everybody has an indicator that gets them to the next phase. So
thank you for that.
We've increased AP courses, we've increased the number of kids taking AP. We're also going to start paying for the AP exam, because before, it was only if you had money to pay for it, whether we saw what score you got, and that's not equitable. So now we're gonna, and that's not mutually accountable. So we're gonna pay for everybody's AP exams.
When will that begin, please?
It starts next year.
Next year. Okay, next year.
Next year.
Okay, great. Good.
Yes, so we're paying students that want to take it. So with that, I just want to very quickly say that with the college and career-ready pathways, you may hear at the state level what constitutes a student that is college and career-ready, and that's that sophomore year. Right now, what I just want to cue up is the law has it as it should be. And what I would ask you is not to pass another bill to mess with it, to be frank. What I would, and I apologize for the frankness, what the state now needs to do, the State Board of Education, is wrestling with what does that mean? So they are discussing at their December meeting that a 10th grader has had to either pass both their Algebra 1 state assessment and their English 10 assessment. If they don't pass it, they're looking at an alternative option. And the alternative option right now that they have is that the student has to have a 3.0 GPA or higher with a C or higher in their Algebra 1 course.
What's this for? I'm sorry.
This is for, to be determined, college and career ready. So the blueprint has funding that says that you get certain funding for all of your kids after 10th grade that are college and career ready, so that they can do another AP class, they can do early college, do enrollment.
Let me ask you this. So I hear an academic side of it, which I understand. But if we're talking college and career readiness, don't we think there's, and that was going to be the next question, is there a matrix? Because when we talk budget, people want to know where do they get the bang for their buck. We're seeing the cost of education go up. Are we seeing the quality, and not just of college readiness, but career readiness? So is there a way to put in there, I guess, I know we're doing a lot of apprenticeships for like a certified apprenticeship to say, all right, this kid might only have a 2.0. He might not be at Algebra 1, but let me tell you something. He's going to be one hell of a steam fitter.
Yes.
And so that to me shows that the money we're investing in the school system is not just academically, but career readiness. It shows a metrics. Is that a thought process?
So that you bring up one of the public comments to the Board of Ed at the state level that has been brought up, that what you see here is a metric that's academic, but you don't see the career metric. So what about a kid who finishes with a 2.75, but has a CTE certification, that starting salary pays probably more than a starting teacher salary?
Amen to that.
So that is, so I say all that to say that we don't really need, the blueprint in language has it right, that there needs to be an indicator. There doesn't necessarily need to be legislation to delve down into that. I think it is with the State Board of Education to wrestle with exactly what you just said. What's the right measure for a student? What's the right GPA? We have a whole bunch of CTE certificates, and a lot of the kids that walk out of our doors, and now that we have associate degree certificates in CTE, they will make a good starting salary, and that needs to be part of
I'm
it.
not saying this to be disrespectful to educators in the room. I'm saying it because from a career standpoint, there are indicators that people in that profession are going to say, that one right there, that one, I was that student that was a 2.0 or 2.2, but I tell you what, he or she shows the characteristics, and once they get into this career field, they're going to take off, whether it's work ethic or just their aptitude to, once you apply the math to the actual career. I was one of those guys where math wasn't necessarily my strong point, but I get into a career.
You just were not taught properly. I am happy to provide support.
We had this debate during the blueprint in the Democratic caucus about algebra. The original blueprint wanted to take out the algebra requirement. And I said to my colleagues, that's insane. We're going to, extract more from our taxpayers and lower the standards. And so we kept the standard there for algebra. But touring the steam fitters training facility, which I did a couple of months ago, you need algebra. Now it's technical. Steam fitters is not just putting some pipes together, but they're doing piping for the oxygen in hospitals. They're doing a lot of technical stuff that require that math.
And you have to pass a math test to get into that apprenticeship.
Yes, sir. You have to pass math test. Yeah. So even that 2.0 kid, we have to find a way to get them to not necessarily master algebra.
right? Algebra, when it's just theoretical, is not what you need. You need to kind of add that theory. When you go to college, I took statistics for social science. I didn't take statistics for economics because that wasn't my major. So I do think, you know, to your point, we can do that, but I think we need to align it a little better, because that kid who's just taking algebra that doesn't apply to steam fitters, then they go take this test that Mr. Hancock has talked about, they won't do as well as if you make it practical, right? So I think that's the pieces that we need to look at.
And in my tour of the steam fitters, they have a program that can come into the schools and work with our educators with that information. And they have the books that they show me the book. I went to the library, I have a library, a lot of books. And they have a book for connecting with students. And they're trying to get into the schools. And so to build in that practicality into the students who know I will not become a math major, but the electrician or whatever. And so that's the thing we can really look at as a county, as a school system, to work with these trades. And I think it was Commissioner Stewart mentioned bringing in those trades, you know, or recruiting and college and career fairs, because they're ready to really work. They have the curriculum to help us to really reach that goal of reaching every student.
So one thing that I want to point out about Charles County, the law requires that in order to get the blueprint funding, the law requires that the districts pay for students who are deemed CCR ready, college and career ready. Whatever the state makes that out to be will be the standard. However, I will say Charles County is still going to pay for CTE, early college, dual enrollment, AP pathways for kids who still may not meet that 10th grade metric. Exactly, because you said, you know, what if their GPA is 2.75? You know, we want them to graduate with that next fit. So I think that's the important takeaway, and that is a local decision that gives more kids opportunities as well. So I just want to quickly finish with these two. The student supports, Pillar 4 talks about the supports for students with disabilities, English language learners. But one thing that I know that it is a big pie in the sky, it was introduced last session, is to look at, it was introduced last session around the neighborhood indicators of poverty. It's a system that goes between, instead of saying, are you farms, yes or no, which is 1, 2, is what are the multiple indicators around the level of the depth of poverty, and it gives you better data. There's no legislative ask from me on that point, only to say that, you know, if I could make a Christmas wish list, it would be that at some point we would be able to get to a more granular indication of poverty, because concentration of poverty can look very different, and it is imperative when we look at state funding and the way we look at that is looked at in a more granular level.
Have you looked at data coming from the Council of Governments, Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments? Because they've actually established what are called equity emphasis areas. And it breaks those numbers down based on zip codes. So I mean, in part of the concept of equity emphasis areas is to address more directly from a policy perspective where resources should be distributed, particularly in communities that, you know, in terms of socioeconomic factors, you can address that using that data.
Yes.
And there's like 3 or 4 pockets in the county, and you're probably very familiar with those areas. So.
Calvin could be one of them. We were talking about earlier about the early childhood learning.
Yes.
Something we were going to use as far as healthcare was concerned was what you would never think, Calvin. But the data that Commissioner President is talking about gives us the tools we need when we go to try to get grants or any other type of funding. Specifically on our end, at least my end last week was healthcare. So now you talk about that ties right in with what you're talking about, and it can be a tool for you.
It's a good segue to the last slide, too.
Yes, and I think this is an important one. So this afternoon, my board is going to be hearing a presentation that I am going to send to you so that you get an opportunity to listen to it. Pillar 5 is both where is the money, what impact is it having? If you're not using the blueprint money and it's not having impact, you may be taking some money back, right? And today, we're going to be talking about the money that follows the student. And that is an important implication. And so I just want to, there's a component to that presentation. So the blueprint says 75-25%, right? So the funding of the student, 75% should follow the kid into the building of the school that he or she attends. That sounds great at a high level. There are some implications to that. There is a bill that is going to be filed that allows that funding to make sure it goes to that particular school, but if, let's say it's an English language learner, it doesn't necessarily have to just go to only the English language learner kids in the schools. It allows it to be able to be braided with other funds for the school to benefit in terms of being able to get programs out and everything else. This is an interesting conversation, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into it very deeply, but if you can, I would urge you to look at it, because this afternoon, the board is going to look at the money following the kid and the implications for what it has in terms of our schools getting different pots of funding. And when our schools get different pots of funding, that is going to be an implication of how do we meet that standard, and what does that mean when 85% of our funding is tied to people. So all that to say that this is just a good appetizer, and I'm just hoping that you have an opportunity and do so to listen to that conversation, and I'll provide you the PowerPoint.
Dr. Navarro, could you just touch briefly on what those areas are of what the pockets of funding that follow the student?
Karen, can you talk a little bit? Because
I know it's
so state level funding, one of the things that we're going to show in our PowerPoint today is the various pockets of funding that make up our state allocations of funding, right? So Charles County is about 50% local funds, state funds, with that sliver of state funding and so forth. So this is actually very, very important for us because it'll have implications at the local level.
Why are you laughing when you're staring?
And it also just has implications for how the state calculates us in comparison to everybody else.
So these are the blueprint categories where the funding, the 75% has to go to the school that has that enrollment. And that includes the local share of it. So when we get funding from the state, it'll say this much is state and this much is local. So the money that we get from the county does not all go to whatever we want. There's a portion of it that has to go to the blueprint. So it's the foundation, which is on total enrollment, comp ed, which is on farms numbers, English learners, which is on English learners, special ed, pre-K, transitional supplemental instruction, which is for K through 3, to help struggling learners there, college and career readiness, comparable wage index, and concentration of poverty. So to kind of say it in a different way than what Dr. Navarro said, currently the way the law reads is we have to show that we have spent 75% in each of our schools in each of these categories. So for instance, if you talk about the comparable wage index, what do we charge to comparable wage index? That's an adjustment that we get for our region that is supposed to make it more equitable throughout the state. So that's why we're asking for legislation that says it's on the total amount that's in the school, that we don't need to report it by these particular categories. Otherwise, it's going to be very challenging. And the other part to that is that means that we as a system have to allocate all of our expenses out to the schools, and we've never done that before. No LEAs in Maryland have. There have been certain charges that have gone out to the schools, but now everything does. So it's definitely a big challenge for the school systems, and that needs to start in July.
Well, that's the question I have, because I guess that's the devil in the detail to say, but that's the last. On the funding and these equity emphasis areas from COG, I think that's, again, goes back to a tool that's already in place that can show where some of the need is in our community and gives you some, I guess, backup to what you're doing. And I guess the second part to that is, I remember this discussion came up when you first had the blueprint came out with regards to the more successful we are, so to speak, as a county with our level of income, our median level of income, the amount of funding we receive from the state could possibly decrease. Are we getting to that point where that our success is kind of be a challenge we have when it comes to state funding?
Yes and no, because the state overall has been successful. So our success also mirrors the success of the state in general. What I have told you guys is, as we have gained more income of the adults, the children impacted by poverty has also increased. So in those indicators, it's still sort of leveling off because our number of kids impacted grows, and that is one of the indicators that they look at.
You're using both. You're using income and the amount of, like, say, free and reduced lunch. Because I'm assuming free and reduced lunch, Title I, is something you use to track the level of poverty in the school system, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And that should help us in the sense of how we get funding from a state and federal standpoint, correct? As far as
Yes, it helped us last year, because we came back and had an addition $7 million and worked with your staff to figure out how do we best support that, and that's how you guys were able to support many things, including our extended learning opportunities. I will say that I do, as Commissioner Stewart said, I'll leave you with some homework. I will leave you with this homework if you have the opportunity. Please listen to the presentation tonight. I will send it to you, especially our delegation in Annapolis, because I will also be sending you the bill, and so hopefully it'll tie for you why we want this bill passed. The funding needs to follow the kids. Fundamentally, that's hugely important. This is not an accounting issue alone. This has implications for how school structures are, and you'll see in the conversation, it'll be, light bulbs are gonna start going throughout the state around who's getting funding, where have, the majority of our funds are in teacher salaries. So more tenured teachers tend to go to certain schools and they stay there. And the blueprint, by looking at the accounting of where the money needs to go, fundamentally pushes against that. And so that has conversation implications that you'll see the board grapple with tonight, that frankly everybody in the state is grappling with. It's an important conversation.
I just wanted to kind of put a little bit of perspective in it, and it's part of the presentation tonight. I took two comparable elementary schools, same level of total enrollment, but they have different breakdown of what those students look like. And between those two schools, there's a $1.1 million difference in the funding that they'll get. So that's part of this challenge, is same number of total students, but now it's not going to be equitable between the schools, and we're going to have to balance that.
It's not that it's not going to be equitable, because the blueprint requires that that certain students, the funding, ELs, poverty, students with disabilities, that the concentration of those students matter. So if it's 500 and 500, but you have high poverty schools or schools with large English language concentrations or concentrations of special educations, that they need to be more highly funded per the blueprint. And that is the conversation that we'll have tonight.
That's going to be very politically charged, what you just said, because it's going to look very different to the public. Like, why is this school getting more money than this school, or this or that? And while I understand the logic behind it, man, the PR behind that's going to be a nightmare.
Why we're putting it on the table for you. And, and if at any time, we started this, Commissioner President Collins, having kind of updates to the commissioners on the blueprint and the implications for that. So, we can certainly continue down that vein.
It's important, especially with that aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Especially when we talk about students, I hate to bring up internet, but the internet was a big deal, and that was part of what
absolutely
we as far as getting funding to certain areas of the county, and that's where knowing the data and where you're driving it from is important to be able to sell it, because people are going to come to the board, people are going to come to you all and then come to us as the ones that funds the Board of Ed, saying, what are you doing?
And per the blueprint from the state, we're going to get what we're going to get based on the formula, and whatever else that the collective we wish to do, again, is going to have to be subsidized at a local level.
Yeah, I have a
Please, Senator.
Chair Lucas, thank you so much. So on a pure mechanical level, how things function in Annapolis, you know, each house, we deal with almost 1,000 bills every year. And every issue we have to vote on, okay? These issues that are very important to Charles County and the school board, you know, I want you to know that you will be the lobbyists for these issues. You have to identify each one, each bill that affect the county that you care about. And you have to analyze it. And I've worked with Mr. Schwartz for prior sessions. He was there with me, especially when the blueprint going. He was there the entire process. And so this is nothing new, right, Mr. Schwartz? And so each bill that affected, you have to be that lobbyist to put in our ear exactly how that bill should be amended, should be adjusted, so it could come out the way Charles County would love it to be to help our population. And you have to be there throughout the entire process, because the bill is amended from, it hits the voting session committee all the way through the Senate chamber, the House chamber. It's never finished until the bill is finally passed and sign and die, it happens. So I would ask that of you to really identify all these pieces of legislation and what other folks want to do to the legislation, and connect with me in the Senate to be that champion. And because, like I said, there are so many issues going through, and I would need a staff of maybe 200 people during session to really detail each particular piece of legislation. And unfortunately for our school system and our children especially, we don't have those high-paid lobbyists in our ear all the time, okay? And so basically, we are, as elected officials and superintendent, we are the lobbyists for our students. And so basically, you know, I just want to kind of re-emphasize that reach out to me before a vote happens, okay? We have all these committees in Annapolis. I just serve on one, and so it's physically impossible to know exactly what's going on in all the other committees, whether it's legislation having to do with school resource officers, which would generally go through the Judicial Proceedings Committee, or some of these bills, budget issues go through the Budget Committee. Educational policy goes through EEE, the Education, Environment, and Energy Committee. And so it's very much a nuance. So I just ask you of that to really keep track of these things and connect with us on a detailed level on each piece of legislation, each amendment that any member want to submit. I have to be aware of it, and we'll work with you to analyze it and to make sure, do our best to make sure it comes out in a pleasing way to you and the citizens of Charles County.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd like to offer, thank you very much for whoever's responsible for this. I've had a chance to review, peruse, and I'm in agreement with your supporting your opposition to some items. One question I have is with the ombudsman. We had, in my committee, a lot of testimony, and some districts have them. I don't know if you all discussed this as a board, but I would hope that it would be some kind of consideration.
We have discussed it briefly, and I think we need to, as a board, determine exactly what that role is. And you brought that up before, and I think it is important to have somebody that's not directly employed by the school system, but that can advocate for the desires of the board and help out people trying to navigate the school system.
And last year in the committee that I served, we had legislation from another county that had to do with school board election, filling vacancies, and it was very good legislation, and I thought it applied also to Charles County. So I did pre-file a bill that will address the time limit for filling a school board vacancy. So that's full disclosure. If you want to look at it, offer any suggestions, please do so. But I think it's certainly very timely in terms of what transpired with this local board. And I believe I said I would share that.
Thank you. Any last comments from anyone? Well, again, appreciate everyone's time and being here today. I think this is I know for speaking for myself, and I think for our board members, very beneficial. And appreciate keeping the dialogue open. And anytime you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the superintendent. I know you do on a regular basis. So, Dr. Navarre, any parting words?
No, and to Senator Ellis, you will hear from me, and the same thing, if anything comes up that you have a question, you have my phone number, you can text me and say, hey, Maria, what's this crazy thing here or there, but you will also be hearing a lot from me, and I agree, Senator Ellis, I now have I also have a responsibility within my superintendent group this year, because what am I, Eric? I'm the legislative chairperson for our superintendent group. So you will be annoyed with my text when I send you different things to just be on your radar. I know you get from every aspect. I'm sorry? Yes.
Both.
Yes. And we will be making rotations on Fridays as group of, I will be down there a couple of Fridays as well, and I will let you know when I'm in Annapolis.
Okay.
Okay.
That's not a good time.
No.
Fridays, we're not there.
There you go. So it might not be Fridays, I'm not.
You don't want to do Fridays.
Tuesday through Thursday.
Tuesday through Thursdays.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Everyone.